that property across the road is right, is on AG. On our side is AI. And so, according to what I read on here, and this is Article 15, non-conforming lots, buildings, and structures. And it's got on here, it's further intent of these regulations, that non-conformity shall not be enlarged upon, expanded, or extended, or to be used as that's right one up there. And whoever was supposed to be running was not even there. I believe Mr. Franklin, I spoke again, it was some people from Jackson County and I think it was Stevens County. Stevens County, so the owner was not even there. And so I thought, well, this concerned me because me and my wife had been seeing, it was not uncommon to see somebody at my age, maybe look like 16 or 17 years old, but youngsters just riding by themselves over there. And before, I remember, people being carried out of their ambulance or something like that. I don't want us. Make sure if we hear somebody, just a single motorcycle, make sure you sort of watch it in case somebody, a kid over there gets hurt or something like that. Let's go check on him. And luckily, like I said, as far as I know it, it hadn't happened. I tried to do what I can, but then when I looked down here and I went to section 1502, and it says, reestablished after discontinuance or abandonment for 1 year. And it's way past, and it had been reestablished. I mean,
I hope you realize we're taking this situation very seriously. All 5 commissioners are concerned. Our attorneys doing a good job researching what strategy we can take. So I think you'll be hearing from us shortly on that strategy. I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate y'all's time.
So we'll be in touch with you. Thanks a lot. Let's move on to the next item. We have the water and road concerns. Do we have Gene Doherty with us? We do not have. Some question mark would Gene be here tonight, so we'll move on to the next item. And that is the 2014 LMIG asphalt research project. Mr. Phillips, I think you have some information to share with us.
Yes, sir. As you know, this is our first of 2 LMIG projects that will be receiving bids this year. This is for about 2.7 miles of asphalt resurfacing on 5 county roads. We had a lot of interest in the project. In fact, we received 8 bids. I've reviewed the bids, and the low bid was submitted by Stratton & Sons Construction in the amount of $205,111.04. The bid is in order, his bond is in order, so if the commission would like to proceed, I would recommend awarding the project to Stratton & Sons at our meeting Monday. Just so you will know, as a reminder, again, this is an LMIG project through the Georgia Department of Transportation, which means we'll receive and have received 70% of the funding for the project, and of course we're required to match 30% of that with local funding. I'll be glad to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Commissioners, y'all have any questions about the bid or any concerns to ask Mr. Phillips?
So does that mean, John, that we're basically 30% is going to come up with that 204, so we're going to be for about, what we've got to come up with is about 60-something thousand?
That's correct.
We've already approved this project and everything.
Right.
That's
Right.
Yeah.
The roads and everything were approved
Yeah.
earlier. That's correct.
Will there be a state inspector on that, or?
We do not receive state inspection any longer through the new LMIG project. Basically, the way it works is we receive the money up front. We're required to do everything to their specifications, so we will have one of our staff on site inspecting, collecting tickets, asphalt mixes, everything along those lines. Then we're subject to an audit by DOT at any time after the project is complete.
Any other questions concerning that project? Let's move along to the next request by Industrial Building Authority. You have a letter there in your package. Mr. Phillips, you want to talk a little about that?
Yes, sir. This is actually, as you said, the property that's owned by the Franklin County Industrial Building Authority. It's known as the Central Franklin Industrial Park. It's behind the old middle school off of Boucher Road, almost 145 acres. Really, the only thing that we need as part of the annexation request, if we have an opposition, we need to notify the city of Carnesville. The property will be served actually by City of Carnesville utilities, both water and sanitary sewer. It is contiguous to city property that's within the city limits. So I don't really have not identified any problems with the annexation request.
All right. Any questions, Commissioner? Next, we have the House Bill 1020 that Mr. Jakes has been talking about. So, Mr. Jakes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I want to make sure that everybody did receive the package that I sent containing copies of the legislation as well as other documentation. During my review of the current legislation that's pending in both the House and the Senate, there was one particular bill that really caught my attention. It is House Bill 120. It is sponsored by Representative Harbin of the 122nd District. I would like to read this verbatim for my colleagues, for media, and those in attendance, as well as our other citizens of the county. The proposed legislation states to amend Code Section 1521-2 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to the payment of fines and forfeitures into the county treasury, so as to provide that fines from arrest and citations by Uniform Division of the Department of Public Safety shall be paid into the state treasury to provide for legislative intent and to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date to repeal conflicting laws and for other purposes. And in a nutshell, what this legislation would do, currently when uniformed officers, Georgia State Patrol and others, when they cite an individual, a portion of the fine in which the county, the citation in whatever county is issued, goes to the county. This legislation would in effect remove the portion that goes to the county and would take the revenues generated by the fines and divert those exclusively to the state. So I am very concerned by that, because the funding mechanisms that comprise how we operate county government are clearly defined by the state government. As everybody is aware, most recently we have had numerous unfunded mandates passed back to the county, both county governments, city governments, and in particular the school system. And here I see this as just another example of how state government, as John mentioned earlier, the lack of inspection services provided to cities and counties, that is a direct result of us now having to shift a cost responsibility of something that was previously provided by the state, not to mention the 30% match for the LMIG. But this, in intent, takes a funding mechanism that was legislated by the state of Georgia and mandated how us as a county government funds our operations, and in midstream they are basically removing this funding source and diverting it exclusively to the county, or to the state, I apologize. And the way that I do read this is the county would still be responsible for the collections of the fine, because the citations are carried back by the individual who is cited to the county where it was issued, paid there, a portion diverted to the county, to the city, and then a portion diverted back to the state. But if this legislation passes, this is just going to be another component of our funding that is redirected into the state government. And I understand that the state government is constitutionally mandated to balance their budget, but don't do it on the backs of the counties and the cities in this state. Now, as a follow-up, I have contacted the ACCG, which does represent our interest, and they have advised me that they are opposing this bill and they are lobbying accordingly. So I guess I come tonight more just to inform my colleagues, inform the media and those in attendance and our citizens that potentially could be adversely impacted. And what I would propose is that we collectively notify our state representative and our state senator, respectively, Powell and Wilkerson, and advise them of our opposition to this legislation. And I would ask them to oppose it on behalf of Franklin County and our citizens and these cities also that are in Franklin County. And I'd be glad to provide any further explanation. I know Elaine and Ken have worked with me very closely, and we're trying to put together some numbers of the actual impact. This is some preliminary data, just basically 1 month, and I would pass this around for your review. But number one, to me, it's not necessarily just a matter of the money, it's a matter of the principle. But it also, as a secondary concern, it is going to reduce the revenues coming to Franklin County from an existing revenue source that the state originally legislatively mandated.
Very good. Mr. Jakes, I appreciate that, and likewise, I've been in touch with the ACCG, and they're certainly not supporting this issue because they strongly support the counties. And what I was able to find out presently is in committee. And I also found out how this bill got introduced by a representative, which I won't go into detail, but it's sort of an odd situation. Talking to Deborah Nested, she is one of the staff members on ACCG, and talking with her that she has been assigned to track this particular bill. And talking with her just as recently as today, she, of course it's just her saying this, it has no change, which made me feel good, no change getting out of the committee because there's not enough time. At the end of this week, as all of you know, this is the crossover week, and she informed me today that there's absolutely no time for that to get out of committee and make a crossover. So, I agree with Mr. Jakes. We need to track it closely and see if Ms. Nested is correct that it does not get out of the committee. But if it gets out of the committee and passes the House, it'd have to do it this week. If it doesn't get out of the House, that's the end of it.
Nor do we want it brought back up in the next legislative session.
Right.
This needs to be removed from the legislative document.
Right. So I appreciate you doing that study. It's certainly something that will be damaging to our county. And the argument that they put forth why they should do this, I say they, this particular representative, I feel like he has no support, or very little support, which is great. ACC is not supporting it. The county commissioner is not supporting it. Therefore, as his hope, Ms. Nestor is correct, that this week it doesn't make the crossover. And then we'll get an overview at our annual meeting where this stands or where its possibility could be brought up. Of course, as you know, any senator or any rep can bring up anything anytime and propose it. There have been several bills that's been introduced this year. It's just actually wasting people's time, so to speak. Let's hope this is one of them.
As you can see, I got this, effective February 20th. It actually had made it to a second reading in the full House.
And
So
has to go
it
through
is
three.
gaining some traction.
Gotta go through it
Has to go 3 times.
3
I
times.
understand, but, just wanted to bring this to everybody's attention. I think that collectively, we need to oppose it, be on record as opposing it. If it's just something as simple as directing our county manager to send an email, basically advising them of our concern and our opposition. That is what I would suggest at this juncture, but I would open,
I think all of us need to send an email, and I think
I'll
the
talk about
newspaper
doing
needs
it
to put it out there.
independently, but it would mean more, I think John could definitely draft something on our behalf.
Well, I'm saying something with the county as well, if the paper and the radio could get something out to let the people know and educate the people on things of that nature, because it does affect them.
But is that,
And that is one reason why that it was brought up tonight, I just,
is that getting the tickets from the scale house?
it says, in the legislation, any
See,
uniform
We're one of
officer,
One of
any
the
uniform
counties-
division of the Department of Public Safety. So,
One of the counties, one of the counties that has a interstate with a set of scales in it.
That's good.
And those fines, they get pretty healthy. You know, depends on overweight, over height. Ticket is worse than overweight
I
ticket.
agree, and bottom line, I wish they never wrote the first citation, but since they do, and since the methodology they utilize to allow county governments to fund themselves is a portion of that fine that we actually have to collect and have administrative overhead in processing and transmitting, we need to have that retained in place as it has been.
And with a post being built right there at Whitworth exit,
Well,
just do the math.
Well, Mr. Phillips, if you would take time just to send an email to Representative Powell, Senator Wilkerson, collectively from our county, plus, gentlemen, I would encourage all of us to talk individually to each one of those people.
definitely will. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now we're talking in terms of date for a special work session. We talked about it at our next regular session, setting a date to talk more about our jail expansion. So hopefully you brought your calendars today, because I think this is a good time to set that in order that we can get busy looking at the options. I've already discussed with Mr. Phillips some options in my sight, but I know there's a bunch of options out there that we want to collectively put together and decide how we can fund this and move forward with this proposal. Any suggestions about a date?
One thing I'd like to throw out, what about following our meeting on Monday night while we'll all be here? Typically the sheriff is in attendance. Just throwing that out there as a suggestion.
Okay, we have a suggestion of March the 3rd after our regular Board of Commissioners meeting. We started 5:30 now, we got that planned.
With a number of items, I don't anticipate it being a really long meeting, but you never know.
We got the planning session to hear, the planning is on here at 5:30, and then at 6 we'll start our regular session. Looking at our agenda, possibility by 6:30, we should wrap up the situation. What the other commissioners think about?
That's just
Good
good.
mix.
I mean, I'm open at other times.
That's it.
Good.
Well, we're already there, might as well.
Any opposed to that day? Good suggestions.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir. So we'll do it Monday night after our regular session. We'll go into just a special session, work session, talking about the proposed jail expenditures.
And I've been looking at basically ways to, there's several different ways to fund it, whether through a bond or through the USDA, or if it were to be with a private bank.
I think that's, we need to put all the options on the table come Monday night, plus we'll hopefully have the data of how much revenue we have on hand and how we're going to obtain the other revenue. Okay, so we'll plan on that after our work session. After our regular session Monday night. I don't have anything else on the agenda. Motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Motion by Mr. James, second by Mr. Harper. I'll take my vote.